you. Bill Carroll here, and I'm joined by one of my friends, guests, and colleagues in the world of draft analysis. Introduce yourself, please, Jay.
Hi, I'm Jay Robbins, of course, with Draft Nerds, as well as with Stampede Blue for the Indianapolis Colts, in case you didn't know where I was from. But yeah, happy to be here, Bill.
So this is my combine. First year I came here, my most interesting interview was with Kiko Alonso, who was a complicated man. I'll leave it at that. It's probably still somewhere in the interwebs, but that's a guy that had some stuff going on. But I've been here a few times. Jay, you've been here a couple.
This is my second year covering, but I've been here plenty of times more so as a fan, as an Indianapolis local. So I've made my way around the downtown Indy for quite a few years at this time of year, but always great to just meet everyone that you can at the bars, at restaurants. It's the biggest networking event in the off season for the NFL. So gotta love it.
Right. It is a convention. It is a trade show. It is a place where people look for work. And it is, as people like to call it, the biggest and most televised job interview sessions the world will ever know. So I'm going to ask the questions people always ask. Now, obviously, you particularly are focused on the Colts and their wants, needs, and the players that they're probably taking the longest and hardest looks at. I'll just ask you, if you're looking at the Colts, quote-unquote, shopping list, who do you think's on it and why?
Well, that shopping list is very long. I will not sugarcoat it. They had a very tough and challenging season where a lot of accountability concerns were raised, a lot of questions about new scheme now in this offseason, especially on defensive side of the ball with Lou Anarumo instead of Gus Bradley at defense. Very different coverage scheme.
Yes.
A lot more adjustments, a lot more complex, a lot more disguises. So because of that, secondary is going to be one of the big conversation points for the Colts. They have to get someone who's a great communicator, whether it's through free agency or through the draft as well. They love their super athletes, especially at corner. Safety, they sometimes have been a little bit less going for the freakish athletes. However, they do now have a new defensive coordinator. We'll see how that changes their profile for that as well. But at corner, they definitely need more long speed now. That's one thing that Lou certainly emphasizes in his corners. They're going to do a lot more press man stuff, or as you coined the term, man-ish.
Yes, man-ish
coverage as well.
Right.
So because of that, the physical profile is still going to stay the same, but you have to have a lot more experience in man.
Right, because even when they play zone, it's going to be an aggressive, a match, a coverage match where you are essentially reading on the fly. So you have to be smart too. What routes are likely to be run based on things like splits and down and distance, things like that. And we just saw the power, right, of a matchup zone just a few weeks ago in the Super Bowl, where you saw that quarters match and that cover 6 and that cover 9 that the Eagles were running. Now they have, I mean, it sort of is a how-to, right, on how to find the right guys for that defense if you're going to run a similar defense. And Lou Anarumo, while I wouldn't say he's an acolyte or a follower, he is a person who likes those same kinds of principles in his defense.
Yeah, and I think it's such a copycat league in the NFL. We just saw so much changes over the last 10, 20 years of people adjusting their schemes to these new trends. But yeah, I think that's a perfect analogy, that they would want to kind of model themselves after what the Eagles have done over the years, which steady drafting, continuously adding talent, getting more depth, finding steady drafting, continuously adding talent, getting more depth, finding value wherever they can get. Maybe not so much focused on the need, where I did say, of course, defensive back is certainly a need, but if there's a guy that they will absolutely fall in love in at a position that might not be the highest priority need, they'll still go get him. I mean, they did the same thing in 2020 with Jonathan Taylor. They traded up to get him ahead of the Jaguars because they fell in love with him at running back, not a premium position, and they had a 1,000-yard runner in Marlon Mack, but they still loved the player. They had to get him, and Mack, bless him, unfortunately, he suffered a career-derailing injury at the very first game of Jonathan Taylor's rookie year, and Taylor took the job and ran with it from midseason on, and hasn't looked back since.
And that's a great example of why you don't just look at what you quote unquote need in the draft. And very often that's something I think fans and maybe even some people in media have a tendency to fall into that trap of saying, oh, you're set at this position. Oh, you're set. No, you're never set at any one position, because football is a 100% injury sport. At some point, everyone gets injured. No one has ever played a significant length of time in the NFL and not gotten hurt, right? It's impossible to play a significant length of time in the NFL and not be injured at some point. Now, you might be able to still play, but it's a 100% injury rate sport.
Yeah.
So the idea that you don't need this or don't need that, you may not prioritize that need over some other needs, but you need everything.
Yes.
Every team needs everything. So you made specific mention, obviously, of corner and a little bit of safety. What's another position that you think is somewhere in the top 5 or so on the list of that, of groceries that they need to get?
Yeah. Well, high priority, of course, is tight end. They're going to have a lot of changes there because they have free agents with Kylan Granson and Mo Alley Cox, both free agents, both veterans, but of course, very different roles, with Mo Alley Cox being their kind of designated blocking tight end, Kylan being more of that kind of like big slot receiver.
Right. 242 pounds and can run, but struggles as an inline blocker. Yeah. So is there a chance they bring one of them back, or do you think they're both gone?
I think that, well, from what I know is that Tom Manning, their tight end coach, he has raved about Mo Alley Cox for years back in his days at Iowa, and just teaching the tight ends like how to block with Mo Alley Cox tape. Of course, though, it's been a few years since then. We'll see if he still wants Mo Alley, and of course, does he have as big of a say in keeping Mo?
Right.
But they have seen also development in Ogletree as a blocking tight end.
Interesting kid.
Yeah. Former wide receiver convert from Youngstown State.
A multiple transfer guy, some character-ish stuff from his playing career, but also a very raw player, despite being an older player, right? He was a 25-year-old rookie, which is why he was an undrafted free agent, right? Yeah. I've seen him go from being a guy that very rarely saw the field, and I've seen him getting more and more snaps. So you think it's basically him, and they're a stack on top of him.
Yes, because outside of him, it's just Will Mallory, former tight end out of Miami, who is certainly more in that Kylan Granson kind of mold, but also with a little bit more vertical threat.
Yeah, and he can block a little bit.
He can, but if you're going to put him as an inline blocker and how heavy they run the ball in this scheme, it's not going to work out for you most times, especially with the AFC South having a lot more bigger defensive ends and edge rushers. So they are still going to need depth, and especially since the tight end position was such a underwhelming production for last year, even with all the guys that they had. I don't think they're going to be keeping some of those guys.
Am I right? Were the Colts 32nd out of 32 franchises in production from the tight end position?
If they weren't 32nd, they were 31st.
Okay.
So
I think they might have been dead last, but if
you're not wrong, you're very close to right.
Right. So that's not what you want. You don't want to be 32nd out of 32. Yeah. If they could even get ooched up into like the teens, right? With everything else that's happening at the other positions, that's going to be a difficult offense to defend.
And so, of course, this is a very good tight end class in the draft. Free agency, though, completely different story. So because of that, with how deep this class is, with a lot of different guys who can fit different roles, and like we've been talking to teams, like there can be anywhere from 3 to 5 or 6 even starters at the tight end position from this class in particular.
Agreed.
And they need a starting level guy at that position right away. Like, I know we're talking about you don't draft for need. When the hole is that big, it can sometimes be screaming at you in the face to take something, especially if there's the value there.
And here's the good news, right?
Yeah.
Though it is a fairly good tight end group, people don't tend to take tight ends super early.
Exactly.
And where the Colts are slotted to draft, both in the first and second round, they could find a starter in either of those rounds. At corner, they may not have the opportunity. Well, maybe. They may still. It's a little dicier to get a starter, immediate starter, in the second round.
Yeah.
You might. And then obviously safety, you have a good shot at second or third round still finding a starter, because people don't believe in taking safeties early. They don't. It's just a thing that nobody believes in doing. So you usually have some time. Usually have some time to pick up a safety later, just because people let safeties slide. This year won't be any different. I don't think the other year. I'm assuming won't be different any other year.
Sorry, folks, we're having a little bit of a charging kind of focus right
making
here.
Sure. Here we go.
Yeah, just got to make sure that everything's up for the steady stream.
And we're only going to go a couple more minutes anyway. So You talked to some players. Tell me who you spoke with and who impressed you so far that you've had a chance to speak to.
Well, so far, day one, it was just defensive linemen and linebackers.
Yep.
So certainly not the positions that we're talking about, but there are also still needs for the Colts, especially at depth of position. But with linebacker, maybe a few little starters, and CJ Speed is a will, who's a free agent that they might be looking to upgrade from.
Yep.
But I was really impressed with Jordan Birch, edge rusher out of Oregon, but also a little bit of defensive tackle as well. He's got a little bit of size. He's up at like around 280-ish.
Right.
We're still waiting for weigh-ins, of course, and we're going to have all the times, but he's going to test very, very well from everything that I've been seeing. And Ballard loves his freak athletes.
That's his thing.
I would not be surprised with Birch. That would be a very interesting player, especially if they're going to try and replace Dio Odeyingbo, who he is a free agent right now.
Correct.
Birch could possibly slide into a similar type of role between that and like Kwity Paye as well, who's in his last year of his deal. But yeah, there's some interesting guys as well. I was entertained by Yaha Black.
Yes.
He was a very, very funny, very charismatic personality, which I really enjoyed. I'm really excited to see him. I'm trying to dive in a little bit more of his tape, but from what I've seen, very, very fun run stopper. Certainly more of a rotational kind of guy. Doesn't have the bag in the pass rush department in terms of moves, and at that size, you really don't need him to. Just give him 20% of the snaps, let him plug up a hole or two, and then you're set for a good rotation there.
Oh, in answer to the question, there will not be a Xavier Worthy of this combine.
No.
That's a once every several years kind of thing. The closest, Golden, of course, people keep bringing up. He's fast, but he's not Worthy fast. A couple of the corners are going to be.
Burden's got some speed as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
4.3, 4.32, 4.33, 4.34. But no, you're not going to see 4.21.
You're going to see some really great athletes at running back, though.
Yeah.
But of course, I don't think they're going to be in the 4.2s, but you're going to have some bigger guys who are still going to be getting those 4.3s, 4.4s that are going to move. This is a phenomenal running back.
There's going to be a group of guys in that 4.32, 4.33 to 4.37, 4.38 range, but nobody's threatening 4.2 anything. I don't